Police officers are often privy to the worst of the worst while they're on the job. Even with ample training and years of experience, nothing truly prepares them for a violent person or a heartbreaking scene. Yet, they are saddled with the heavy responsibility of protecting the voiceless and maintaining peace, not exactly a walk in the park. And when Officer Andre Thomas followed an emergency call to an abandoned, stolen car, he came face to face with something he didn't expect: a flash from his own past. Shaken, he made a decision that would change both his life, and another's, forever. There are countless stories about the horrible and disturbing encounters officers come across while on duty. Officer Andre Thomas of the San Diego Police Department knew them well. He'd seen humanity at its absolute worst.
Before we begin, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe to our channel, click the notification bell to be inspired by these heartwarming stories every day.
Confronting domestic violence, murder, and neglect are all important, deeply upsetting parts of wearing the badge. The news is saturated with these types of stories, causing people to become desensitized to their horror. Officer Thomas understood. Still, for Officer Thomas, operating out of San Diego, California, certainly came with its perks. For one, the sun shone almost 300 days out of the year, which came in handy for his particular role. San Diego is also home to SeaWorld, where Officer Thomas actually worked closely with marine animals. He was always a passionate animal lover, and SeaWorld was part of the reason he chose it to call San Diego home. Another perk of the town? San Diego doesn't exactly qualify as a mecca for violent acts. The sun-drenched city enjoys a crime rate 15% below the national average. Even so, crime can happen anywhere at any time. This fact was in the forefront of his brain when Officer Thomas set out one November day. Suddenly, a call came in over the static voice on his police radio. There was a stolen car that needed investigating. The vehicle in question happened to be just around the corner from Thomas, so he headed toward the coordinates. He had no idea what to expect when he arrived, so he approached the car cautiously, like he always did. The sun was on its way down, so he flicked on his flashlight and peered into the windows of the vehicle. The front and passenger seat were empty, so he began to expect there was no one inside. Until he saw movement. A shadowy figure was in the back seat. Thomas braced himself and drew in a sharp breath, preparing for whatever might be on the other end of his flashlight. All at once, he got a clear picture of what was in the backseat. He sighed in relief as he saw nothing but a sweet-faced, oddly familiar-looking yellow Labrador sprawled across the backseat of the car. He was shocked to find the pup in such a strange circumstance. He knew he had to get him out of there. His heart sank as he realized why he felt like he knew the dog in the backseat. This yellow Labrador looked eerily similar to his late dog Malachi. It had only been a few months since Malachi's passing, and he ached for his companion. In the eyes of the abandoned pup, he saw a similar disposition to that of his dog of over 10 years. It had been Malachi who moved with him from Fresno to San Diego as he pursued his career as an officer. Shaken, Thomas gathered the dog from the backseat and did the only thing he could. Protocol forced him to drive directly to the San Diego Humane Society, but Thomas was fully endeared to the pup that was lying calmly in the back of his cruiser. Thomas arrived at the Humane Society and explained the situation. The dog seemed to be in good health, so the workers remarked that he most likely belonged to someone. The officer felt a tinge of disappointment at this idea. However, as the rules mandated, he left the found dog at the Humane Society where he would remain for a bit. The animal professionals posted his picture online, hoping that his owners would come forward. Thomas had a different idea. 3 weeks passed and no one claimed the dog from the stolen car. Thomas had vowed to never adopt another dog after his beloved Malachi, but in the back of his mind, he knew something changed the day he responded to that call. Thomas arrived at the Humane Society and made short order of the required paperwork before he took the sweet-tempered dog home with him. He named him Victor as a testament to the rough situation he had been through. As stated by the San Diego Police Department, the two have been inseparable ever since adoption day. The SDPD shared the story of Victor and Officer Thomas on their Instagram profile and have received tons of feedback. Plus, a few cable news close-ups. "This warms my heart so much, it was meant to be," said one commenter. Another added, "Thank God for people like Andre." Andre Thomas's story is one of those rare gems in the often disheartening life of a man on the front lines. Miracles happen in even the most unpredictable times. There is something profound about the bond between man and dog, and the healing powers therein. Victor and Officer Thomas might see a little something of themselves in another officer and Special Pooch. February 15, 2015 began as a day like any other for on-duty police officer Jeff Gonzalez. The air was crisp and the quiet neighborhood of Autumn Ridge, Wisconsin, seemed as peaceful as it ever was. However, that was all about to change. It was a particularly cold day, and there was plenty of snow on the ground from earlier in the week. That was just one of the reasons why it was so strange that Officer Gonzalez saw a clearly distressed black Labrador retriever wandering around by himself. Even though he wasn't necessarily responsible for assisting lost pets for his job, Officer Gonzalez had an affinity for animals. Besides, he believed it was the right thing to do for his community, although in this case, the dog wasn't the only one in trouble. The dog was frantically pacing back and forth. Concerned that he might run into the road and get hit by a car, Officer Gonzalez reduced his speed in an attempt to get closer to the animal and keep him calm. At that point, the dog took notice of the police officer, and although he stopped walking, he started barking, loudly. The moment that Officer Gonzalez rolled down his windows, the dog's tail started wagging. He seemed friendly, but something was definitely wrong. Officer Gonzalez stepped out of his car, and the Labrador became excited, running around frantically. The officer could only assume that he had done something to frighten the poor animal. Unless there was something more? When the dog stopped again and looked back at Officer Gonzalez, it became clear that he wanted to lead him somewhere. Intrigued, the officer obliged, and he followed the dog directly to a nearby house. It wasn't long before he figured out why the dog was so upset. It was at this home that Officer Gonzalez found a woman, whom he assumed was the dog's owner, slumped over in a chair on her front porch. He quickly assessed her condition, and she didn't move when he touched her. Officer Gonzalez initially assumed the worst. "I thought she was dead," he later admitted. "And when I went up, she was very cold to the touch. Her lips were blue." Thankfully, he checked her pulse, she was still alive. He immediately called dispatch for help. Officer Gonzalez also contacted his partner, who helped him carry the woman into her home. The frigid temperatures could have threatened her life just as much as whatever else she was suffering from. While they waited for the ambulance to arrive, the two officers were able to identify the woman, Crystal Went. With that information, they quickly tried to reach her next of kin. Officer Gonzalez had the difficult job of calling Tian Went, Crystal's daughter. Basically what he told me was, he said that they thought that she was dead, the young woman said. Shocked, Tian and her aunt rushed to the hospital where the police had just taken Crystal. From there, all they could do was sit and wait for whatever news the doctors could give them. Meanwhile, Crystal's dog, John Boy, was still worried too. Eventually, the women were informed that the incident had been caused by Crystal's heart condition. The doctors explained that she had been unconscious in the cold for nearly an hour, but she survived. Crystal's survival was thanks largely to both Officer Gonzalez's quick thinking and the cleverness of her black Labrador retriever, John Boy. Officer Gonzalez was quick to credit John Boy for saving the day. Officer Gonzalez was convinced that John Boy was the true hero of the story. "I gotta believe that at this point, he pointed me in the right direction," the officer said in an interview. Tian confirmed that John Boy and Crystal shared an important relationship. "He's very protective of my mom," she added. That shouldn't have come as any surprise, since John Boy had 3 stints in a local shelter before Crystal adopted him. Tian believed that John Boy and her mother were meant for each other, and it was easy to see why. Though Crystal would need to be deemed healthy enough in order to be sent back home, at least she would have someone special waiting for her. Tian gave Officer Gonzalez a big hug to thank him for his hard work. Her mother was on the road to recovery, and it was all because this hardworking officer took the time to investigate a situation that others in his position might have brushed off. Countless folks consider their pets valuable members of their own families, and this story is proof. Most people would go to whatever lengths necessary to save the lives of their loved ones, and many dogs are exactly the same way.